Thank you very much for inviting me to Sacramento. It's my pleasure to be here, and I want to thank all of the members of the chapter board for their hard work throughout the year and for all of the work that you do here on the local issues affecting the city, county, and region of Sacramento. What I've found as I've, in the last year and a few months since I joined the ACLU and gone to meetings of our chapters, is that in each community there are different issues that are foremost on the mind of our members and our activists. So before I spend too long talking with you about the things that I thought I would talk to you about, I want to get a sense of some of the topics in the work of the ACLU, either here in the state of California or nationwide, that are on your minds today that I should be sure to touch on. So this is my chance to hear what's on your minds.
Yeah, recently California passed Proposition 14, which will basically knock the 4 smaller parties off the ballot for the general election and eventually eliminate it totally. If you can respond on that a little bit.
Sure. Are there other issues? Yeah.
Separation of church and state, and the federal government trying to impose religion on everybody.
I'm concerned that Guantanamo is still open.
Okay.
Rights to privacy?
Privacy. Okay, well, why don't let me take these two and then I'll stop.
The right of small complaints to a fair trial.
And the surveillance issues.
Yeah.
Privacy, but in terms of the internet.
Right. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here. If you see my eyes shifting from time to time, that's my 7-year-old Cyrus, and he'll take good care of himself. We had a certain plan for today, which involved the whole family coming up and visiting Sacramento Zoo, but when his 3-year-old brother woke up and was in no shape to travel, the plans changed, so he and I made the trip together. And I do have to say, you have a wonderful zoo in Sacramento. I already visited, we're going back after this. So let me just begin by painting a picture of what the ACLU is doing nationwide, what we're doing here in California, and then I'll make sure to talk to each of the issues that you asked about. One of the things that's amazing about this organization is that in every state, there's an ACLU affiliate similar to the ACLU of Northern California. So whether it's Mississippi or Florida, Texas or Montana, there's a staffed office of the ACLU in each and every state in the country. And those people wake up every day and their only job is to defend the civil rights and civil liberties guaranteed to us in the U.S. Constitution and in particular within that the Bill of Rights. That makes the ACLU truly unique among civil liberties or civil rights organizations, that on-the-ground presence in every state with full-time attorneys and other professionals who carry out this work. The other thing that makes the ACLU truly remarkable is our nationwide strength, and especially the expertise that's brought by the national office and the national organization. So when you become a member of the ACLU here in Sacramento, not only are you giving strength to the ACLU in your local community, not only are you giving strength to the ACLU in California, but you have a voice in the halls of Congress through our Washington Legislative Office. You have a voice in the courts of the country, bringing more cases to the U.S. Supreme Court than any other entity other than the federal government itself. But you also are giving strength to the ACLU in places like Mississippi and Montana, in places like Louisiana and Alabama, where there are not enough ACLU members to make that work sustainable in those communities. So from a place like Northern California, the financial resources that we build are shared with those offices throughout the country. I just came back from an event in New York which celebrated the 90th anniversary of the ACLU. And on this note, I'll touch on some of the church-state issues that you asked about. I heard from the ACLU of Florida, where they have a number of cases right now dealing with church-state issues. As you know, Florida is a place where there's a very strong fundamentalist I'll say right-wing movement that was most recently typified by that small church that wanted to burn the Quran. But we see the influence of religion in communities throughout Florida, and I met two young women who attended public schools where the school was, in essence, a propaganda machine for a particular religious point of view. From the moment that you entered the driveway of the school, all the way up through the curriculum in the classroom, the whole school was, in essence, a church. These two young women contacted the ACLU, which brought a lawsuit on their behalf, and we were able to win already an injunction that removed all the religious symbolism and the religious curriculum and the religious ceremonies from that school in Central Florida. We see cases like this now all over the country, and we continue to fight them in all communities. In Connecticut, there's a lawsuit that the ACLU has filed to keep the school from holding the graduation ceremonies at a church. And the school claims that because of a lack of the school's own facility, their only available option is the church. The church is 24 miles apparently from the school, or 20-something miles from the school. So we see these types of cases throughout the country. Here in California, it's, I would say, a little bit less urgent, some of those problems, but we still continue to see them. And whenever that issue arises, we do work to stop it. The church-state issues, though, also come up in another context, and that is that in our state, I think we see them more as they move into other issue areas, particularly on issues related to gay and lesbian rights, and also on issues related to reproductive rights. On gay and lesbian rights, as you know, the ACLU has worked very hard to secure the equal protection of the law as it applies to marriage, so that any two adults who are consenting have the right to marry regardless of their sexual orientation. We fought that through the courts, we fought that at the ballot, and we've most recently been supporting the federal lawsuit brought by Boyce and Olson that has made a significant decision at the district court level and is continuing to make progress. So the church-state issues, the freedom of religion, those continue to be hallmark issues for the ACLU. There's a new turn that's taking also, which is around the recent very strong anti-Muslim rhetoric that we see throughout the country, whether it was the pastor who wanted to burn the Quran, or whether it's in New York City with the proposed site of the Islamic Center. And the ACLU is really coming out strong, insisting that we protect the freedom of religion for all religions, and whether that involves where you build your place of worship, or whether that involves having the free right to associate, we are standing strong in that area. I'll stay on the national theme and talk a little bit about the national security issues. And there was the question about Guantanamo being still open. When President Obama was elected, there was a whole transition process set up through which the new administration would determine its policies and also determine who they're going to appoint to key posts. And during the period from the election to the inauguration, the ACLU developed a full proposal to the president for what to do in the first 100 days of the administration. One of those was to issue an order to close Guantanamo. Another was to issue an order to end the torture practices, what the Bush administration called the enhanced interrogation techniques. Another was to end the global gag rule, which barred U.S. federally funded reproductive health programs from even discussing the option of abortion for women who needed to make that choice or wanted to consider that choice. Those were some of the early outcomes of the Bush-Obama administration, which quickly passed those orders. What's now happened with Guantanamo is that a year has passed and the Guantanamo Bay has not been closed. And there was a lot of resistance from Congress to moving the prisoners who were held at Guantanamo onto U.S. facilities. But more importantly, beyond just whether you call it Guantanamo or call it something else, whether you move it from a military or naval base in Cuba or onto the prison onto the U.S. mainland, the underlying practice of detention without charge or trial has continued in the Obama administration. And so the ACLU is continuing to fight vigorously to change those Bush-era practices. I recently heard from one of the national ACLU attorneys in this area, and they're very concerned about the transition from the Bush administration to the Obama administration, and that as these practices continue, it normalizes the practices. That what may have been an aberration during the Bush presidency, when it's continued by the Obama presidency, becomes a new normal. Here in Northern California, we saw a case which has really given us great concern that signals this trend. And it's a case called Jeppesen. And this is a Boeing subsidiary that basically they are an airline, like a special company you hire for special flights. And they were hired by the CIA, by our federal government, to carry out the torture flights. These are the flights where, through extraordinary rendition, the U.S. government would pick up someone in one country, send them to a third country where that person would be detained and tortured. Many of the ACLU clients who have experienced this turned out to be factually innocent. Not only were they not guilty, they were just factually innocent. These were cases of mistaken identity in some instances, where a person was picked up in one country, taken and tortured. And Ben Weisner, the attorney who's litigating this case, pointed out that even when we found out that some of these were cases of mistaken identity, instead of being taken back to their home country with an apology, they were released blindfolded somewhere else in the world. The ACLU brought this case against Jeppesen, and the case went to a district court here in Northern California, and then it went to the appeals court, and then it went to what's called en banc in the appeals court. And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm learning all these things for the first time. But we were not yet arguing in a trial to defend these victims of torture's rights. We were arguing at the courts about whether the trial can begin at all. And under the Bush administration, the claim was that the very subject matter of these flights, the very subject matter of an enhanced interrogation program or an extraordinary rendition program was itself a secret. Whether such a program existed at all is something that they would neither confirm nor deny. And these were the arguments made in court under the Bush administration, which the Obama administration has since continued. We're likely to appeal this to the U.S. Supreme Court because it's our view that even if we don't win the case and have the opportunity to even proceed with a trial, it's important to be on the record that we pushed as hard as we could and as high as we could to make sure that these victims of torture had their day. Now, all of that said about the Obama administration, it's a big difference between the current administration and the previous administration. And while some of those policies are being continued, the ACLU does have the opportunity to make its case before this administration, even if at the end they're not agreeing with us. But we are pushing as hard as we can on whether it's Guantanamo that you initially asked about or this range of national security issues.